Today I'm replacing the driver's side axle shaft on a 2013 Volkswagen Golf. Before I jack it up and take the wheels off, I'm popping off the center hubcap so that I can loosen this axle nut. It's a 12-point 24 millimeter and it's super tight, so it's easier to do it with the wheel on the ground so you are not fighting against anything spinning while you're trying to loosen it. Once you've got this loosened, then you can jack up the vehicle and take off the wheel. Make sure, as always, that you set the e-brake. My driveway is tilted and I definitely don't want anything rolling onto me. So I've got this bolt out and loose. You want to make sure sometimes the axle shafts stick. Sometimes you might have to hammer it loose a little bit. If you do have to hammer it, make sure that you don't mess up any of the splines in here. My guy, luckily, is moving pretty easily. You can see I can push it in, and the axle is starting to come out of the way. Next, I'm going to take the shield off so that I have easier access to the bolts on the other side. These guys are Torx. There's just a few of them, and then I can drop the shield out of my way. These are T25s, to clarify. There are a few of these underneath the vehicle as well, but it's really not that hard to pull all these little screws out, and I think moving the shield will give us easier access. Now I can kind of see in there a little bit better. Next, I'm going to take these 3 lower ball joint nuts loose. They're 16 millimeters. That way I can slide this knuckle out, give myself more clearance to pop the drive shaft out of the way. Kind of prying down on the control arm while I try and get this separated. Now I have it all loose and out of the way, so I can hopefully drop this drive shaft in, out, forward. Might have to take that sway bar link loose. Alright, so I turned the wheel all the way to the left and I was able to get the drive shaft loose and out of the way. Now I gotta see how I can pop it loose from the other side. So, as usual, everything would be easier if I had a lift and could be standing under this car, but I do not. Basically, there's a clip on the end of this drive shaft that keeps it locked into the transmission. I got a pry bar behind, see if I can show that to you, behind the drive shaft, and just popped it loose from the clip. Being careful to not mess up the seal. And I've got it out. So basically this snap ring right here locks it into the transmission. You have to figure out a way to get a pry bar here so that you can pop it past that clip, and then you can pull the whole thing out. This boot's totally separated, and honestly it's usually more cost effective just to pop a new axle in it than to tear it down and fix it. Make sure everything looks good on your seal, and then we can get ready to pop the new one in. Your new axle should come with the clip on it. Also, if you've got a good part, they've got a new bolt for you too. You shouldn't really reuse these. Once you get the new one in place, make sure that the splines are engaged with the transmission so that you're not doing any damage, and then with a rubber hammer you can try and hammer it past that snap ring. I put some silicone on the spline so that everything could slide in easier. Once I got it lined up, I used the axle to pop it in. Now I know that it's in place past that snap ring, so it's not going anywhere. We can put it all back together on this end. So I turned the wheel back closer to straight ahead so I wasn't fighting everything. I've got the drive shaft lined up in the splines, then I just need to get the ball joint and the control arm back together. Since the control arm decided to fight me a little bit to try and get these ball joint bolts back in place, I used a jack to jack them up high enough so that I can start the nuts, making sure not to damage the threads. Next, I'm going to put that shield back in place. Then, once I get the wheel back on, I'm going to look up the torque and we can torque the center axle nut. together. The lug nut torque on this vehicle is 80 foot-pounds. I always torque the wheel, go for a test drive, double torque it again. I always want to double check and be safe. The torque for the axle nut varies on if you have a 12-point nut or a hex nut or whatever, so look up the spec. This one was 148 pounds plus 180 degrees. Some of the requirements have you on the ground or off the ground, so Google it and do what is specific to your vehicle. You don't want a loose torque nut. So we've test driven it, and now we're double checking the torque. Can pop the hubcap back on, and we're done.